Hello and welcome to the Monster Mechanics Podcast, where we take creatures of myth and media and see how they can be improved. I am your host, Scott Paladin, and with me, as always, is the Mo to my Larry, Zach Jaquays. How are you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing all right.
Great. And with us as never before is the D'Artagnan to our Mo and Larry, Justen. How are you doing today, Justen?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Doing great.
Not too bad, not too bad.
And today we are going to be covering Mass Effect Species.
All right, we made it.
We somehow got through that intro. That is the worst I've ever done in it. Like literally the first time we ever did a podcast, I did an intro better than that. All right.
Oh.
That's all right. So Mass Effect is a video game from originally 2007, which makes me feel incredibly old.
Yeah.
I played that game in high school.
Yeah. You're a wee babe. Anyway, so it's a sci-fi, far future flung, galaxy spanning game. Where our main character, Shepard, ends up going out and becoming a free agent to save the galaxy. And in that galaxy, it is populated with many different species. Now, on the scale of sci-fi species, the Mass Effect, like NPC species, are actually pretty good. However, everything has room for improvement. So as we did before with our D&D fantasy races, we are going to take a look one by one at a few of these Mass Effect creatures and see if we can, ask some questions and maybe tease out some places where they maybe lack or improve, or maybe they haven't aged super well looking at you, Asari. And so on that note, we're going to start with the Asari. As an explanation, the Asari are a blue-skinned alien race of... They're blue-skinned alien babes. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is what I'm talking about. They don't age super well. This is basically a species that was created specifically for a Captain Kirk type environment. Of a little bit, they suffer from horny writer syndrome just a little bit, but they are a monogendered species who there's no right way, there's no clean way to say it. They can fuck any creature in the galaxy. That's their whole deal. Like, that's one of their deals. They're incredibly psychically powerful. They got little head cartilage thingies. So, do you guys have initial thoughts on the Asari? Is there places where they're falling down for you?
Yeah, I think my biggest issue is that they are basically blue-skinned humans with Star Trek prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, just starting off, like the fact that they look so human is, and it's even something I think they lampshade in one of the games.
Kind of, yeah.
There is maybe in fanfic writer circles, a little infamous of a dialogue scene at a bachelor party where somebody points out that the Asari, in fact, might just be like, it might be your brain self-selecting. Mm-hmm. For like in universe, it might be brain self-selecting of, well, the Asari look like human women, or but a Turian will think the Asari look like Turian women.
Yeah,
and one character, I believe, also thinks that it's neurochemical in nature.
Yeah. If I recall, it's a Solarian, a Turian, and a human sitting around a table, staring at an Asari dancer who's gyrating directly in front of them, and then talking about her. Well, like, no, I think she looks like a blank. I think she looks like a blank. It is a little bit of a lampshade hanging moment. But yeah, I think that if we can make them a bit weirder, we will be successful here.
Yeah, when you've already got a creature that can breed with any species in the galaxy and produce viable offspring.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they have to look like that species as well is, there's room for improvement there.
I am thinking, because we have Justen on the show, and Justen is one of the hosts of a Babylon podcast, I am thinking, and at this point, this isn't spoilers anymore for them, is you could take the Vorlon approach from Babylon 5, where they are an entity that when you look at them, you see what you expect to see.
Yeah.
You just kind of see they are attractive to all species because, again, neurochemical or some sort of psionic projection, perhaps, where like by looking at them, they just tell your brain to show an attractive creature.
Yeah, I was thinking that like they're proven to be very like, okay, Mass Effect has like their own form of space magic, but we're gonna just go with space magic here. But like, yeah, it's like some sort of psionic ability that self-selects out the parts of your brain that's like, I see an attractive mating partner, which. Maybe, okay, here's my, like, weird idea for the Asari, just to throw it out there.
Oh, please. Yeah.
What if the Asari itself is not the bipedal alien hominid on their planet, but in fact was a parasite that mated consistently with the bipedal hominid on their planet?
Oh, are we talking? So we're talking a little bit like a Star Trek Trill situation where
Yeah.
the Asari are like the blue skinned alien chicks that we see are actually like a monkey, and the real Asari is some sort of slug creature living in its brain.
No more than they've made it enough that they've like the basic form of like this thing is that it basically mated with this hominid enough that the baseline of the species has shifted so significantly.
Maybe, yeah, or like sort of like a mitochondria situation where it's two entities that sort of like live in like they're basically one species now. You know, mitochondria kind of are they're like they're like animal. They're part of us. They're part of us, but they also kind of have one foot out the door. They got their own genome, you know, like you feel like they could, like mitochondria have always been keeping an eye on, like, if I need to leave, I could boat here. I'm good. Like, it's fine. I can Irish eggs at the door if I need to, if this whole being part of a human thing doesn't work out.
I also kind of like that, that sort of hand wavy, like genetics, space magic makes them look like something, you know, that you expect. Because then you could just have like your death companions or whatever on your ship just kind of allude to like, you know, didn't expect humans to, you know, find this attractive, and like never actually like explain what exactly they look like. Just like, really, that's the route you're going.
That is funny. Somebody who has an objective view, or even if it was something like, yeah. I guess the Geth are the best example. I was trying to think if there was a truly asexual species, a species that does not produce sexually in the universe, and I don't think there is, which is a whole. That should be something that exists. But yeah, somebody who's like, you realize that's like a spider, right? Yeah, that could work. There's also the other big feature of them is that they're able, like literally in universe, they're able to mate with any species and to produce offspring, which is hand waved in a really kind of way. Like science size, it's like supposedly that they are, when they mate with a species, with a creature of another species, they don't intake any genetic material from that species. They take features of that species that they perceive and alter their own genetic code in order to produce like the father side of the gametes. So like that's such a weird mechanism. Like it's about like what the Asari thinks of the other species in order to take on traits, because there's no actual DNA being transferred between the two of them, because the likelihood that two like species that create that arose on two different planets would have compatible DNA is just zilch. Like there's no reason to do it. My instinct would be to say the Asari are the elder race of the council races. They're the ones who rose to prominence first. They were the first people, one of the first ones to find the Citadel, if I remember correctly. They've been there the longest. Their technology is the most advanced. They could have just solved this with technology. They could be like, we want to bone alien races and have babies. We have figured out how to do it with, like, you just go to the clinic and you like get a scan and we create, you know, like the gametes that we need. And then we, you know, just like, it's like, this is not something you need biology to solve. It could have been solved as a like technological issue because we're so far in the future.
There's also just a whole lot of weird kind of issues with that. Like they're already this, you know, species that lives thousands of years. They're technically more advanced than every species they encounter.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're trying to form, you know, these relationships with species that are, you know, shorter lived, less technologically and, you know, mentally advanced.
See, this is why the characterization of the Asari as like warrior monks never felt right to me. They really seem super horny. Like they really like maybe the reason that they went out to the stars is because they needed they're like there's aliens up there that we can bone. Like, this, like that's the whole point. It's like we all live long enough that we've all each other on this planet already. Every conceivable, we're completely out of new sexual partners. Let's go to the stars.
They're just overachievers. They're just like, we're gonna build the best spaceships. We're gonna have the weirdest sex. That's obviously what they're going for. They're elves. They're the elves of the setting. They're better than you, and you know it.
And that's if you're going with the Asari, that's what you're into, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. This turned into a horny episode because we're talking about Mass Effect, and Mass Effect is a horny game.
It is. Yeah.
To like prelude my interest back, they knew what they were getting into when I was invited on the show.
That's true. Yeah, there's a combination that happens when you get me and the Bad Pod crew together a little bit. We end up talking about alien penises. It's happened before. I will save some cursed knowledge for the actual upcoming secret project. Okay. So what are Asari really? If we're talking about they project themselves, let's define a little bit of canon here. Are they a cloud of sentient spiders? Are they a slug monster? Is it something like that? Or are they truly horrific? Or are they maybe just like featureless? Like, do they all look like smooth marble or something like that underneath all of that?
I like the idea that maybe they like some of their defining features, like they're blue to start with, and like maybe that head fin kind of bicycle helmet look they got going on is sort of just all over their body, or like they're actually just a squid creature or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I could go first. I think squids. I like cephalopods, so like squid creature sounds great to me.
Psychic squid creature.
Are we then encroaching on the Hanar territory? Because they do have a floating squid creature.
Oh yeah.
Maybe Hanar are just divergent Asari.
I kind of like that. The Hanar are weird enough that having them have been like an offshoot, like this is what happens when the ultra religious parts of the Asari just left. Like they went off on their own to form their own colonies and dropped the whole because Hanar don't have sex, maybe because like they're the chaste horny one, they're the chaste not horny ones. They don't do the projection to make themselves look attractive.
Interesting. Weren't the Asari originally like basically being groomed by the Protheans?
I think that's like a one-off line from ME3. I don't maybe yeah.
Most lore things I found out at ME3 I promptly forgot.
There's some as cool as I can't remember his name, the actual Prothean that shows up that you get for as a party member. He's cool, and I like the fact that he's just an unrepentant asshole. Those are all the best characters in Mass Effect. But like, I don't remember most of what he said about like, oh yeah, this is the way things. Except for I did remember he said that Solarians used to eat flies, which is a really good line.
According to the Mass Effect wiki, the Protheans posed as one of the Asari goddesses.
Oh, okay, so they pulled a Vorlon thing.
Yeah.
That was probably horny. They were doing that for horny reasons. Anyway,
but with the Hanar venerating the Protheans, like that kind of ties in a little bit. Like,
yeah, if the Asari had been like a protege race for the Protheans, brain. So if they'd been like a protege race and had been sort of like being set up, like here you go, like let's give you guys a leg up so that the next cycle maybe that you're going to pull it off, and then the ultra religious fanatics broke off from their main part of their culture and like founded their own worlds. And that's the Hanar. And then the Asari are the sort of mainline version of that, who, the desire to go out and make connections cross species might actually be you could actually argue that was a designed trait. Like that was something the Protheans sort of like wrote into their culture specifically to try to get the Asari to form a galaxy-wide government that could then face off against the Reapers.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
That's actually
really cool.
An in-universe reason for them to be super horny actually is not bad. Okay, so Asari are basically Hanar that psychically project what they think you want them to be. I like that, and that they were designed that way by the Protheans. I think that's a reasonable place to start.
Yeah.
All right. The next one up is, I believe, the Turians. Turians are pretty iconic.
Yeah.
They are described as avian-like. Interestingly, they have metal carapaces, which they actually kind of modeled. You can see on the models for the characters that there's kind of a metallic-y glitter to their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're interesting. Apparently they're so they're these like, they're quite tall, like 7 feet tall, something like that. They're taller than most humans. They got these they got sort of Asari like head crests, although they're all pointy and sharp. And they got like extra mandibles around their mouths, which is really cool. They got neat voices. They have like a flanging effect on them, which says that they're like, to me, that says that their vocal systems are a little bit different than ours. I think the effect is they're trying to go for is, how like a bird doesn't really sound human when it talks, like a parrot, like it's got kind of a different thing going on. I think that's what they were going for. They're like, this is a species that evolved to make different sounds, instead making something that other species can hear. So they're actually pretty cool. This brings up one of the interesting features of the Mass Effect universe, which says there was somebody who thinks like us on the team, because they talk about the dextroamino, the chirality of proteins, which is really cool. Like there are several species who they have all of their amino acids flipped, and their biology is fundamentally incompatible with like human biology because everything is reverse. Which is that is a real thing that could exist. It just so happens that all life on Earth happens to be the other way. I forget what the terminology is for it, but the main version of the chirality is I think we're all right-handed and Dextra is left-handed. Editor Scott here. Past Scott has that backwards. Dextra would be right-handed, and something like Sinister would be left-handed. As a left-handed person, Past Scott should know this. And that's really cool. I like that factor. That in all other respects, they're relatively normal, except that their proteins are all different, which means like their blood and stuff is like poisonous, and you can't eat their food, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I think is interesting, that I think is a good, like, might be a good jumping off point, is that they have sort of like a big, huge, like back facing collar that is always something that I thought was just like a sense, like an armor thing they did. But I'm looking at a picture of a Turian without armor, and no, that's actually part of their skeleton.
Yeah.
So I feel like that could be an interesting jumping off point for like maybe they were originally like either they were a prey species, or perhaps, I mean, most birds are predators, or like most large birds are predators. They were a predator species that was not the apex predator of their world.
Okay, so they were like somewhere midway on the food chain. I could imagine like an earlier version of that, one of the precursor species, one of the species that evolved into the Turians, where their like head carapace part and that back part like sort of interlock, or one slides under the other to form a really protective shell, back when maybe that head frill was larger, that they could have like a more armored appearance that really, really protected the vulnerable area that a neck would be. I could absolutely see that. They'd be kind of turtle-like at that point.
Yeah, or kind of like a pangolin almost.
Yeah. That would be an interesting. It doesn't fit with their morphology. They've got very obviously like sharp needle teeth and stuff, but a species that evolves like a pangolin to eat something like a termite mound would be really cool, because like they don't need teeth. They'd have these big long creepy tongues. It'd be very alien-like, and because something like a termite mound, they're actually very calorifically dense. They have the same sort of ability to gain extra calories like humans do, where like we ate fruit, which is really, really calorically dense. The same thing would be vaguely true of things like termites or ant colonies. But they have a very different morphology. But yeah, they've got front-facing eyes. They got big old talons. They've got needle teeth. These things, that definitely says predator to me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we were right with the extra armor, that they were some sort of like mid-tier. There was something that fed on them as well, or possibly that it was something to do with like the quote unquote predator is other Turians or other Turian precursors, where like it's about fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That might explain why, because the females I think have smaller head crests, and maybe they don't have that bone structure thing. I wonder if there's a image out there. I mean, there's only really like one female Turian.
Yeah.
This is a problem of technology where like they only really modeled one model for most of the species. And so we have a distinct lack of like female Krogans, female Turians, stuff like that. The one character who shows up does look like she's got kind of that same thing going on. It's definitely not as prominent. Probably because, the artist really wanted to make her look more feminine.
It does say, just looking at the wiki, that the female Turians lack the crest of horns found in the males, and that they have cat-like eyes.
Yeah, they have like a face mask thing going on, which is actually kind of a cool image recreation. But yeah, they got kind of a face mask thing going on. The fact that they have a metallic carapace because they have they have low protection from radiation. Their planet apparently has a weak magnetosphere, which means that the surface of their world is bombarded with radiation, which requires them to have like some sort of built-in protection against it in order to prevent cancer, is a neat idea. It implies to me that actually like surface evolution was quite late on that world. Like maybe the original species of the Turian homeworld, Paladin, like evolved underground or deep underwater where radiation wouldn't affect them, and then only quite recently came out to the surface and had to develop the metallic radiation protection adaptations.
I mean, that would track with like the Reaper cycles being like 50,000 years or something.
Oh yeah, so maybe they weren't even. They would probably have been. 50,000 years is not that much in evolutionary terms, but but they might have only been out for the last couple of them. Let's see. Is there anything else? They have these little mandibles too.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the mandibles look like they're just there to cover the sides of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look like they grab onto anything, which is that's a shame. They should have prehensile mandibles that can they can grab. They need to provide little pedipalps that can grab stuff. That would be that would give you a similar amount of facial manipulation. Like they would be able to move them to mimic human mouth movements, which would give you some expressiveness to the characters. But
I'd have loved to see kind of full on Predator scream with the mandibles going out to the side. That'd
be awesome. For that matter, I'd just like to see a good animation of a Turian biting into a chicken leg, tearing it apart with pedipalps and stuff. That'd be really cool. It's interesting. There's an idea from one of the other species, the Elcor, who I don't think we're going to get to today, although I love them. But the idea that their facial structure and voices are so flat and expressionless that people have a hard time understanding them. And with this sort of if these creatures like the Turians actually do have a metallic structure in their and maybe even a bone structure in their faces and their outer coverings, sort of exoskeleton-like, they might have a similar problem where they're very hard to read facially. That because they just can't move their face in the way that other species expect to see.
Yeah, the Elcor have an adaptation where they just say their emotion.
Yeah.
Turians don't really seem to have that, and so they all come off as a little bit of assholes.
Yeah, that's true.
I do like the notion that the Elcor basically developed the verbal equivalent of emoji for talking with other races.
Yeah.
The truth is that Turians are cool enough that we don't need to do too much to them. I mean, if you buy into the idea that every creature, every race that's going to show up in this world, for the most part, is going to be bipedal, once we get to 2 arms, 2 legs, as far as that goes, these guys are really quite strange and alien, which I really like.
Yeah,
I think I would just take them farther in they are covered with armored plates, where their faces are made up of a single sheet of bone, like a cubone, and make them look even more alien that way. That would be really cool.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple races in Mass Effect that are the people making those races, those species, were in our mindset.
Yes. There were people doing what we're talking about now when creating this world. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Krogan, because I think the Krogan are going to get something like our Turian praise here too, because they are significantly, especially their facial structure is so weird. The Krogan are for lack of a better term, they're the orcs of Mass Effect, right? They're the big, strong dudes who love to fight. They're all kind of assholes. Apparently their world that they come from is full. It's
full on Mad Max.
Yeah, it's full on Mad Max. Every creature in that world is some sort of monster, and they all fight each other all of the time. And so the Krogan have evolved to be incredibly damage resilient. They're very fast. They're fast. They have good reflexes, and they're very strong. So they have multiple hearts, and all of their biological systems are redundant and stuff. They've got these big old armored crests on the front of their faces. They've got these big old camel humps, kind of like the Turians, but even more so. They're really cool. I like the fact that they have these frog faces where the eyes stick out to the side.
Which suggests they're not actually predator species, but more herbivores.
I kind of like it actually says something to me about the Krogan that they aren't a predator species. They just do it for the fun of it. That's actually kind of funny. And that seems very Krogan to me. They're we eat moss and leaves, but no, we like to punch things. So we punch things a lot.
I was wondering if they might possibly be opportunistic scavengers. Because there's a lot of dead animals all the time on God, what's Tuchanka.
Yeah, Tuchanka.
And so maybe like they do eat meat, but it's only opportunistic because if you want to like prey on something on Tuchanka, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah. Maybe they're one of those species that like they like their meat a bit. What's the good word? I don't want to say rotten, but a little bit rotten. Like they wait for it to break down a little bit before they go to it. They want it a bit piquant, you know. They want to have a certain something. Krogan food is incredibly disgusting to everybody else. It smells awful because like they do the thing where is it Finland who they bury shark meat in the sand until it putrefies and then they eat that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That seems like a very Krogan thing to do.
I mean, also probably one of the biggest survival traits is being able to keep track of and react to thresher maw appearances. So I think that's where the giant sandworms known as thresher maws originated from.
Yep, it is. Or at least they're very prominent there. I also like the idea, maybe they're, instead of being a pursuit predator, they're an ambush predator. Because like crocodiles don't have forward-facing eyes either. They sit in a single spot and they watch things move around them until they're in an opportune moment, and then they jump out and grab it. And I could totally see a Krogan or a precursor Krogan acting in the same way, where they're kind of like half buried in sand and they just got their little eyes sticking out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That'd be cool. That crest also, we even see them use this like that, where like that is totally something that a more primitive version of this species would have used as a mating fighting implement. Like those guys headbutt the crap out of each other like wild sheep do, like rams and goats. It's like, yeah, those dudes are like, they headbutt each other all the time.
So I had to find it.
Yeah.
My favorite codex entry for Tuchanka is that before the Krogans invented gunpowder, the leading cause of death on Tuchanka was eaten by predators. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, it was death by gunshot. So I imagine that they are a rather competitive species.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, like, again, these guys were they didn't have as many problems. I think we can move on from them. Zach, you wanted to cover the Vorcha. Did you have ideas for the Vorcha?
Yeah, let's say if the Krogan are the orcs of the galaxy, then the Vorcha are probably the goblins.
Yeah.
They are a short-lived species with an adaptive biology that heals quickly and reacts to whatever environment they end up in. So if they survive it, they'll adapt to it.
Yeah.
Which I've always thought was kind of one of the cooler things. They only live about 20 years long in age, so they don't really have a lot of time to put together any kind of significant society. All their interaction is basically based around combat.
Mm-hmm. They seem like a very instinctual race. Like they have got a lot of nurture in their behavior, and they kind of just lean on that very hard.
From what I understand, like basically they hail from a planet that was very resource scarce. So what little resources they did, they were always fighting over, and they just kind of adapted to that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, they definitely feel like a species that was created to fill a gameplay issue. Mm-hmm. Like they needed. They're like, we need some cannon fodder characters that we won't feel bad about killing. And they're like, well, these guys are basically like goblins. So we're just going to put a bunch of goblins in there. We don't feel bad about like thinning their numbers or committing genocide essentially because they're so prolifically reproductive. And they like, I remember even at one point, like various Vorcha being like, yeah, we don't care if people kill other Vorcha. Other Vorcha suck. We don't feel any allegiance to them. You shouldn't feel guilty, Paragon character, for killing a ton of us. Yeah, I know, right? It's like, I can understand why you put that in there, but maybe don't. But yeah, I would like to, one thing we never really get is a really strong, like, narrative about who they are and who they feel themselves to be. Like, they're always just out. They're a villain race, a little bit like the guys with the 4 eyes, the Batari, I think.
The Batarians, yeah.
Yeah, the Batarians who are like, again, we don't meet enough of the friendly ones in order to like get a good idea of who they are and what they do.
Yeah. I do think the Vorcha like biology is interesting because they're the biological, like individually they're like biological versions of Borg drones. And in the sense they like, if they survive a wound, they will adapt to it.
Yeah.
Like they will grow thicker skin or armor and like, looking at, because I didn't know this, apparently, because it's been long enough since I've read the codex of these guys, but they'll even like develop like increased musculature to deal with high gravity situations.
That's really cool.
And it states that the Vorcha as a species no longer evolve as other races do. Instead, it's all individualistic. And I wonder what gets you to that point is, like, what is the evolutionary threshold for a species where it's, like, species-wide, like, evolution stops happening?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it seems like they have to have evolved in a location where not only were resources scarce, so competition is incredibly high, but also things are changing a lot. Like they're like possibly maybe their planet's in an unstable orbit, like where or it's in an orbit that is very hard to predict the changes. So things like maybe it's around a binary star or something like that. So you never know how hot the planet's going to be. You never know how many, like what animals and creatures are going to be around, because what the circumstances that allow something to become prolific change, year to year, so much that like within, multiple generational evolution is no longer good enough. Like it needs to be like, you gotta adapt right now. Otherwise you are going to be left behind. That's kind of that could be kind of cool. There's also the, before we thought of generational evolution, before Darwin, one of the leading theories was like, I forget the name of it. My biologist wife is going to be yelling at the podcast right now because it's the idea that like the way the giraffe developed was there was a horse, and every generation that like a horse like strained its neck a little bit and made its neck a little bit longer. And then when it had a child, it passed down to that longer neck. So like the changes happen within the lifespan of the creature. And then it manages to pass those down to its children. And so over the course of generations, they like, it's literally like what that thing was trying to do during its life. And it was the same idea that like if you cut a tail off of a rat and then breed that rat, that the child wouldn't have a tail because there was no tail piece to pass on to its offspring. So it's entirely possible that like Vorcha could actually like use the same tech. Like they actually maybe have built a biological or genetic system that allows them to do the same. Like they, the codex entry says that they don't evolve, but maybe it's just they don't evolve like everybody else, where like it's about random mutations selected during their reproduction cycle. But instead it's like, no, they're literally changing their like DNA all of the time. And then if one of those Vorcha happens to have children, it passes on. Like, it's like, here, I have built a cadre of tools for you, my children, to use. Here you go. Have them, have this increased muscle mass, have this regenerative ability. And so like what they actually are doing is rapidly evolving over time. That could be really cool. In that case, what you might see is like maybe perhaps if that's true, the version of the Vorcha that we see is maybe like the first, like they finally got out onto the galactic community. They're out in the world, like finally having all of these selection pressures pulled off of them, where they're like, oh yeah, you can now just like, food is not scarce anymore. Like we just replicate that shit. Like it's fine. Like you can just have a sandwich. It's all right. You don't have to fight for it. And so then like, because the selection pressures change, you might see over the next, 30 or 40 years, because Vorcha have short lifespans and evolve quickly, like the Vorcha of the next like era of development, post Reaper Vorchas might be completely different from the Vorchas we see now, which would be really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a like what would a Vorcha species that has like rapidly evolved beyond the need for resource hoarding and guarding look like?
I feel like a species that has specifically evolved like to function in a society, like we have come into a society that we don't know anything about. So we're going to find ecological niches within like citadel life. So like maybe you have Vorcha who are like incredibly good mechanics because they have like very rapidly developed the ability to like model things with 3D in their head and like picture how they go together and like understand engineering principles on an intuitive level. So they make incredibly good engineers and like mechanics, just like by nature. They don't need any training. Like they pop out and they're like, okay, I'm going to fix this spaceship now.
I like the idea of like, yeah, like that. And like they develop like insulated fingertips to like prevent from shocks or something of like.
Yeah. And like differentiation would be really cool. Like they start like subspeciation out where they're all Vorcha, but like you've got like the mechanics Vorcha, and then you've got like customer service Vorcha who like can handle being abused all day, and they're just like, whatever, it's fine. Like it doesn't.
Who are just like constantly producing serotonin.
So I think that's just the normal fortune.
Yeah. Or like, and they're like, they develop really good personal skills and empathy to like work with people and like get you to understand that like they're trying to help you. And so then it becomes like, oh, we're just gonna hire like, or maybe it's even like pheromonal control. Like they're gonna issue out pheromones to calm down customers or something. You could go really wild with it.
Calm down.
I like what we're doing here of like saving them from this weird like mook niche.
Yeah. No. Now they're just a different sort of like weird NPC character who's just gonna do whatever like is needed. I also would love to see like, because like they've been introduced to a bunch of new environments, you could see other kinds of Vorcha. Like you could see the swamp Vorchas who are like built, like they were introduced to a swampy world and they're like, okay, now we're going to have web feet and we're going to be able to breathe underwater. Or like, you know, I want to see high gravity Vorcha who are like shorter and really squat like dwarves, you know?
Maybe that's what the Volus are.
Love the Volus. Okay. Let's see. How much time do we have left? How have we been going? We got time. Okay, cool. We're going to skip questions this time because we have got so much to talk about. It's like we're not going to get even to some of the more fun characters. All right, we got to talk about Quarians. We've now covered all the bases. Now we got to talk about Quarians. I love the Quarians so much. So much so that I freaking wrote a migratory fleet, like homeless population into the breathing space. That's how much I love the Quarians. However, they got problems, man.
Oh.
They are way too human. Like, everybody got mad when we revealed Tali, the best girl's face, and it was just some random stock photo lady with like a couple of like black eyes and like. But my thought is like, no, it needs to be even more alien. Like, I want it to be like a worm under there. But also, considering they are the only other dextroamino species, you could go and like make them a bit more Turian-like. Maybe they're a bit more reptilian, or like maybe that. You know, they've been up, the story for the Quarians, of course, is that they were kicked off of their homeworld because of a robot revolution and have been living in space for generations. And therefore, all of their immune systems have weakened because they've been living in sterile environments to the point where they all spend all of their time in suits. And so you never really see their faces until you have sex with one, basically. This is a horny game. And so we get some guesses about what like their general body shape, like they're bipedal. They have what's the word? They have the legs that go backwards.
I'm forgetting the name of it, but
God, I should know this. I'm a BattleTech fan.
Yeah. God damn it! It's one of word for legs that go backwards.
They're like bird legs.
Yeah.
Digitigrade.
Digitigrade. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I would not have been able to continue the podcast.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Yeah. Yeah, they got digitigrade, whatever. They got backwards facing legs. They got chicken legs. We can also see they got tits because we see Best Girl Tali, you know, she's got a fairly form-fitting thing, which is a little bit weird. Tits on aliens is like humans are the only species on Earth that have them. Why would they be co-evolved in other species? But one thing that's also interesting, I was thinking about this earlier. When you romance Tali, because of course you're going to romance Tali because Tali is best girl. At one point she says,
I'm sorry, I like my CIA waifu.
wait, no, who CIA?
I'm talking Liara.
Like, CIA. Okay.
I like my women to do war crimes. I'm like John Sheridan.
See, the thing is, everything you described could have been Miranda was the problem. That was the question. I was like, Miranda? No, I like Miranda, but I ship her with Jack. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you at one point she says that the most intimate thing that Quarians can do is link their environment suits together so that they share an environment. And it involves you getting sick and then overcoming it. And then you can have skin to skin contact. And in the game, the version of this is that she like takes immune boosters and then she can take off her helmet inside Shepard's room to boink them. And that's the thing. But wouldn't it be more interesting if you're a non-Quarian partner of a Quarian, what you have to do is put on a suit in order to like start maintaining a sterile environment in order to be clean enough to have sex with your Quarian partner? Like that is a much more interesting thing, then it's like, oh, well, I can take some supplements and stuff and therefore build up my immune system enough to do this. It's like, no, like I love the idea that I like you enough that I am going to make the drastic changes that you need for me to become like physically safe for you. And I know that for gameplay reasons and for really more asset generation reasons, we can't just have Shepard all the time in a Quarian suit. But that's actually a really cool, like cross-cultural moment that would be really neat to see.
So I have an idea for Quarians.
Oh, yeah.
That requires me also rewriting the Geth.
Okay.
Because it makes no sense that the Quarians are digigrade. Oh, I can't say that word. Yeah. Too many syllable or consonants there. But the Geth are not.
They're not?
I believe they are.
They've got, like, or maybe I'm thinking. Maybe I'm just looking at a bad picture. No, they are. They are. So I was looking at a bad picture that showed them in a weird way.
Yeah, they look a lot like the Quarians. Like even the shape of their.
So okay, if we're like as humanity, we are making robots in our own image. Like that's the end goal. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
So the Quarians obviously did that too. So what if the Geth face is just a Quarian face?
So like they've got the single eye in the middle, and like I'm down. Yeah.
Like there's maybe like it's missing a mouth or something there, but like maybe that was like
I'm
the person who originally came up with the Geth.
I'm down for that. You can also see, like, I love that the Geth always, like, they don't always, but a lot of the time they put extra eyes on their heads because, like, why wouldn't you? I wonder if there's like maybe because they're always kind of up on the sort of temple area of the Geth faces. Maybe there's a feature like a gill slit or something right there, or little holes for like nostrils or something. So you got like the central eye and these little nostrils on the side for the Quarian face. And so it means that like the Geth are like mimicking the Quarians and like still sort of subconsciously because they feel themselves to be a child species. So they're like still sort of building off of a model that they have kind of deep in their code. That'd be really cool. You know, I just noticed something, and I'm gonna send you guys. One of the top images for Geth is them all holding M16 rifles. Like,
why?
I
just found it. Okay, this is okay. I don't know. We can cut this or something, but the best part of this though is that it is entirely based on like the link for that image goes to a Gethan Starfinder.
Oh, weird. Google image search, you do not provide great results sometimes. Okay. Yeah, and actually the Geth, if we're going to really address the Quarians, the Geth-Quarian interaction is really cool. And it's probably, it's the core of that species' character to me. And so like playing into that sounds interesting to me. Like one thing that was written, it's in the Quarian, the wiki, so it must be in a codex, is that a lot of Quarians have cybernetic implants, like more so than other species, which is really interesting to me. I like the idea that this is something that they've been interested in, like body modding and cybernetic enhancement for a long time. And so the Geth may have been in part developed to run cybernetic like implants, like the original VI that grows into being true AI were like literally part of the Quarian body for a long time. And then when they get expelled, like the Quarians maybe never have really recovered from that. Like they still have these designs that were meant to be run by VI, and they still have like not properly like overcome the shortcomings of not having the Geth there. Like they're, you know, maybe that could even be how that would explain a stupid fucking line that happens late in Mass Effect 3. Spoiler for Mass Effect 3, if you manage to succeed in reuniting the Geth with the Quarians say, or Tali says, that the Geth are even downloading themselves into Quarian suits and helping rebuild their immune system so that they'll be able to live on Rannoch without suits again. If that wasn't because that they were just like doing it themselves, like, oh, this is a new thing that we figured out what to do. What if that is actually them returning to a job they used to do? Like they used to be running the artificial immune systems that Quarians developed for themselves hundreds of years ago and that have never run properly because the Geth haven't been there to do it.
Interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, that's rad. Well, like literally like the Quarians are dying because they treated the Geth so badly that the Geth left, basically left. They forced the Quarians off of Rannoch. And in doing so are like literally dying without them as a species. They cannot survive because that's part of their very immune system. Their very like metabolism is built around having the geth. That's rad as hell. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, then your thing about the geth face and the Quarian face being the same, even max, like it becomes even more true. Like maybe most of the Quarians underneath their helmets have like cybernetic implants and stuff. And so they might actually look quite a bit like geth. Like they might have like cameras and stuff.
It might even be why they cloud their masks.
Yeah, because
it's like the younger, like maybe the Asari still remember, and like the Asari are chill, so they're not going to be like, ooh, have you looked under those masks?
Yeah.
We know what's under there. But like the younger races are like, what's going on there? And then like any human who sees that and says, that's a geth, they're going to like, listen, we know how humans work. They're going to pull their pistol and start blasting.
Yeah.
So that's why they cloud their masks, is because it's like underneath there is what any other person recognizes as a geth face.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes you just tie those two species together so that when you manage to get that reunion at the end of 3 or midway through 3, it like everything makes sense again. Like all of these creatures, like, oh, okay, like there's this like hole that they were each meaning in each other's lives. That's rad. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, is there anything else we want to cover? Do we want to talk quickly about the Elcor or the Volus?
I mean, Elcor are probably one of the cooler.
Yeah, we could take a moment to just praise the Elcor, who are these big.
They're neat.
Yeah, they're like these big elephant guys who. Like they're from a high gravity world, so they have these squat limbs, and they like rest on their knuckles. They use all 4 limbs to walk around, and they're these big bulbous dudes. And they, because of their lack of facial articulation and their relatively flat tonal, their voice affect, they just speak in a very monotone voice that doesn't express emotion. And they like have developed a cultural adaptation to communicate with other species by saying what they mean. They're like, they'll be like, humorous jest, blah, 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 blah. And like, which I really like. They're just fun. They're so weird that like I can't improve them almost because like, they're just fun.
Isn't like in their home language or whatever, like they speak like more like pheromonally?
Yeah,
or
they said that they use pheromones. They use very subtle body language to understand each other. And then like, I also like, it's one of the things where some human languages use tonality as a part of their communication. Specifically, Mandarin Chinese is the most famous one, where like if you say a word with a lower pitch and then say it again with a different pitch, I think there's 3, maybe more, maybe there's just 2, but there's 3, I think, where it's like low, mid, high. Those are 3 different words to say it like, lower register, mid register, high register. And so all of those little things, like a foreign speaker has a hard time hearing that and saying it. And if it's the same sort of thing for the Volus, where like they're just using, really, really subtle indications to communicate with one another. Real quick, I'm going to close my door because my wife just got home. One sec.
Sure thing.
Okay, so I was just looking at the wiki page for the Elcor.
Yeah.
And I find it funny that the reason that we have this unique thing about their species is because modeling their lips was too hard. Which is just like, as somebody who that's a very fun, like, fortunate coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, like, sometimes the best things come out of limitations like that. That's great.
I'm just picturing like the design meeting for that, where they kept getting the models back from their intern artist who just could not get the thing done. And they're like, well, we're crunched for time, so screw it. These guys just don't have lips now. And the game designer's like, now I got to redesign all this.
I mean, the game designer was probably like, whew, it's not my problem anymore. And instead had to hand it back to the writers who then had to edit all of these lines.
Yeah, and so they just replaced it with like the current mouths, and it's like, okay, we can have one
animation where they kind of like just do this a little bit. Then we'll just send it back to the voice people and have it do it all super, super flat all of the time. That's great though. I mean, like, yeah, can you imagine how like fun it must have been for the writer once they started doing all of that and realized it was hilarious? Like, I can imagine that guy being like, yes, this is great. Like, because it really is. It's one of my favorite aspects of the. So, okay, we haven't talked. There's the other big main species we haven't touched on at all are the Solarians. Do we have anything to say about the Solarians? I like that they're like kind of gray alien-esque. Like they look a little bit like our traditional version of aliens, but they have enough of a difference to feel grounded in this world. I almost don't have anything like they're amphibious, which is cool. They're short-lived. They're very fast. They're cool.
Yeah, they're one of those races that like I think also like jumps out very like they're very well realized. They have a ridiculous gender imbalance in like population numbers.
Oh yeah.
Like 90% of the species is male.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they also like as a species have photographic memory.
Yeah. That's cool. You know, I'm looking at I keep seeing pictures of various like NPCs. And one thing I noticed, which I remember thinking about before, was a lot of the Citadel races like have a cultural thing about face paint, like, and facial markings and stuff, where they have, you know, like you see this, like sometimes it's subtle, like Liara has eyebrows and like freckles. But like the like various counselors and stuff will have like what looks like painted on like face paint, like on their chin or like a design over their face and stuff. Even freaking Best Boy Garrus has like blue underneath his eyes, like he's a football player. And I wonder if that's maybe a cross-cultural tradition that started to allow people to differentiate different members of the same species, where like it could be very difficult for a human to tell some Turians apart from one another, just because our brains are really good at finding faces, but like an alien face may be like kind of difficult for us to like figure out the subtlety things. And so it's like become a thing where like you extravagantly like put on a face, you put on makeup specifically so that other species find it easier to recognize you.
I mean, I'm almost positive that's the gameplay reason for it.
Yeah. I mean,
that's like, okay, we got to make one Turian model.
Yeah.
But like we can only do so many different shades of color to make them feel different enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So face paint.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably really easy to just throw another layer on top of a texture that already exists there, you know, throw an alpha layer on it and then, you know, flat shade it. And then it goes over it goes under the normal map or whatever. It'd be cool to see. I don't know if they did this or not. It's been a while since I was paying that much attention to it, but it'd be cool if that was like you could get information about who somebody was just by looking at the face paint. You're like, oh, they've got a red stripe over one eye. That means they're associated with this political faction. Oh, I look at this person and they've got, you know, this pattern or whatever. That means that they are very anti-human, you know, because that's something that anti-humans do.
I think in the lore for at least the Turians, like that was meant to indicate which clan they were a part of.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I'd love to see more of that. And that would be a cool, I'm all for like building that kind of stuff into the narrative of the gameplay, where like, if you had to pick that when you made your Shepherd, you're like, I have to do the same thing because Shepherd wants to be recognized, like, especially as like having to deal with all these aliens. You're like, you have to create a face paint pattern that's going to be marked as Shepherd basically. And then over the course of the game, if those things convey information, maybe it's like an important part of like the change of Shepherd that like they change their face paint, you know, like when they become a Spectre, they add another line or something like that, or another pattern in order to distinguish themselves as a Spectre, you know. That'd be really cool.
Kind of like how when Tally eventually changes her name from to Vas Normandy to sort of indicate that she's now part of your crew.
Yeah. Freaking love that. The fact that she changes her name to the name of the ship just like kills me every time. I'm like, that's fantastic. Yes, thank you. Okay, well, we are coming up on almost exactly an hour, so I think we've covered our time.
Alrighty.
Justen, if people want to have liked what they've heard from you today and want to find you, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, okay, so there are a couple ways you can find me. First, I am a writer for Gatecrashers. I do wrestling coverage for them, but I also write about other stuff that I just pop on randomly there. But if you want to listen to more of my voice, there are two places you can find me normally. The first is the Complete Discography, which is a reread of Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. We have so far recorded through The Fifth Elephant.
Nice.
We have a number of we have a number of guests who come on the show, and it's me and a couple other people who are wonderful. It's very nice, very fun, very wholesome. We get into stuff that, like, you know, what we love about this series, what speaks out to us. I am also a host of the Babylon Project, which is a Babylon 5 rewatch pod, which we are currently in our 4th season of coverage. If you want to hear something incredibly chaotic that talks about war crimes, alien dicks, and
Zima,
occasionally rewriting stuff for alien biology and headcanons, that is much more your speed. We're probably not the best B5 podcast on the internet, but we're definitely the most chaotic and probably the queerest.
All right. And then on that note, you can find me on the internet. I am at Scott Paladin.
And I am at Pictoglyphic.
And Justin?
I'm at Justen Writes, and Justin is spelled with an E because none of my parents knew how to spell.
Awesome. We didn't do listener questions this time because we wanted to get extra content in here. But if you have questions for us, just tweet them at MonsterMPod, or you can email us at monstermechanicspodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.
Till next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Monster Mechanics. And a special thank you to Justin for joining us for this great episode. Links for their socials and projects down in the show notes. Hey, so we are on episode 56 of the actual proper mainline Monster Mechanics episodes. We have up until this point been a bi-weekly podcast, which is to say, or semi-weekly podcast, which is to say every other week. And we have managed to put out pretty much consistently for 2 years, which is longer than I thought this project would go when I set it out. However, I am here to announce a little bit of a production change. We are going to be moving to a monthly schedule. Currently, the idea is that we're going to be releasing on the last Tuesday of every month. The reason to do this is to make room in my busy schedule in order to bring in another project. So look for an announcement of that nature very soon. We have yet to actually record, which is why I haven't given you details yet, but we are very far along on the production chain, and you should be looking for that very soon. Now to the credits. Monster Mechanics is produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jaquays. All of the ideas generated during this podcast are released under a do what the you want public license.